H-U-L-L-C-I-T-Y. 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 That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and with me this week I've got Dill. How are you?
G'day, mate. Doing good. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Can't complain at all. It has been a little while now since City last played, so I guess it's given us time to catch our breaths and take stock from what was a reasonably one-sided performance in that 4-0 defeat at Norwich. I suppose casting our minds back 2 weeks ago, just about to that game, what were your overall impressions of the performance?
It's sort of a hard one because we got 16 shots on. Sorry, not 16 shots on goal, but we got 5 shots on target, 16 shots compared to their 19. And so when you look at the score line 4-0, it doesn't fill you with that much confidence. But you know they're a pretty high quality championship team.
Yeah, and I guess that's a really good thing to focus. I think a lot of people have I think people have sort of split into two camps on this game in terms of our performance and, the fact that we've created a lot of chances. And even Volter himself has sort of come out and said, we just needed to be a bit more clinical and that sort of thing. And you sort of think, potentially there was a couple of chances we had to score goals, but they missed a penalty. They had those 2 chances before they got their first goal where they were put through 1-on-1 with the keeper, and Panda's made a really good effort to stop the goals going in. Where you sort of think, unless you're planning to win games 6-5 or something like that, I think it's more of an issue of the defense rather than the attack in that sort of performance. Yeah,
I sort of see that's sort of where we're lacking, and we sort of have lacked in a little bit. Like Panda's been on fire. Previously to that, I think he's not exceeded everyone's expectations. I think we had those expectations of him when he first came in, but he sort of lived up to it. But I don't know. I was hoping for a 1-1 draw for this at least. But
and I guess walking back a little bit, what I just said, contradicting what I just said a little bit, but in that first 15 or so minutes when it was 0-0, they had a couple of really big chances, but other than that, it did feel to an extent as if we were sort of maybe not going toe to toe with them, but it did feel like a game that we were kind of on the front foot for and really trying to make an effort to win rather than just go there for a point, which was good to see. But it does just feel like maybe it's a matter of Hughes came on at half time, whether having someone like him from the start will help going forward. Drame at left back didn't seem to have too good a game, so whether Giles now comes back in for him will be interesting to see. But it feels like maybe there's a few little tweaks like that that just need to be made, and we will be able to take that next step. But I think it was something like 70 shots conceded in the 4 games between Cardiff and Cardiff, QPR, Stoke and Norwich. So it's just not sustainable, is it?
No, and especially when you're coming up against, harder games like Norwich, you sort of want people with a bit more confidence, because if you can string together some good attack against them, and if you can get one behind the net, then it's going to still be a grind for the rest of the game. So I guess you're sort of relying on your defense and your backline to sort of have that mindset and maybe that confidence. And I think the 16th minute and the 20th minute that Norwich got in, and so that probably crushed them a little bit. But that's definitely an area that we want to take a look at.
Yeah, no doubt. And it did feel as if once that first goal, and certainly when the second went in, as you say, heads probably dropped a little bit, because you sort of start to think that there's not really that way back in. While it's 0-0, while we're making those saves from those 1-on-1s, you think maybe there's a chance to sort of get like a smash and grab or something like that. But it wasn't to be. In terms of personnel then, Alzate coming on in the second half looking bright. Pedro as well making his City debut. Yep. What was your take on the goal that wasn't given against Pedro?
I don't know. It's I'm trying to remember the specific.
Sort of grasping at straws in terms of positive moments for us, I suppose. With basically that.
What time did he get on? He get on at
It was reasonably late, wasn't it? It might have been around 70 minutes. Have a look.
So yeah, I don't know. I can't really say we didn't get the rub of the green that game because
Yeah.
we just didn't really put that much effort in.
You think
but-
if only that goes in, it's still
Yeah.
a 4-1 defeat. Yeah, I think for me as well with it, I mean, I know a few people have sort of said it's inconclusive on whether or not he handles the ball. And I think for me, it's the fact that, you can make the argument that it's hit his sort of shirt. Because I know with offside, with handball now, it's meant to be that if it hits anything on the shirt sleeve, it's not handball. But the fact that he's sort of swatting it in, it reminded me a bit of, if you remember, I think was it two fans scored against, I want to say Birmingham last season, where he's full on sort of almost handled it in. It's that same sort of motion where, even if by the letter of the law it's not a handball because it's hit the right part of his sleeve, the fact that he's sort of almost handling it in, I'm like, I wouldn't want to see that given against us. So, in that sense, it did seem like he came on in the 72nd minute. So, I think that's probably the right decision made there. Other player making his debut was Hughes, coming on at halftime. We mentioned just before.
Yeah,
Seems quite harshly getting a bit of abuse or being spoken down about because of his involvement in their third goal, where I thought quite well, he sort of turned out of trouble with the ball and looked to play Giles through with it, and then Giles was on the ground with an injury or something, and Hughes has kind of gone, I don't really have an out ball now, and he's lost the ball and they've scored. I thought he was actually quite bright on in his debut. I thought he had a few really good passages where he showed intent to sort of pass the ball and then move into space to receive it and get the ball upfield. So I actually thought he had quite a good game.
He looks good. I remember watching his highlights before he came to City, and just he's got that look about him where you can just sort of see players, especially in the Championship, because they shine a little bit brighter sometimes. And I'm sort of excited for maybe seeing him starting and what we've got Sunderland coming up. But I don't know. I think he could only do as much as he could with what was coming on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when you're coming on already 2-0 down, it's a bit of a hard one as a centre back on debut to really, are you trying to help push the side forward to get back into the game? Are you trying to set up shop just to keep the damage minimal? It's always a bit of a tough one there. Look, I'll go to you first for your votes from this game, and we can jump on to the Sunderland game.
I think what did I have? I had Pandor. You've got Balumi here, which I also had, and then I don't know.
Yeah, the third one was pretty tough, I thought.
That's a hard one, yeah. Maybe give it to Hughes. Why not?
I was just going to say, we just sort of pumped him up a little bit. So, and not a bad one. And as you said, so Panda, Balumi is probably the one we haven't mentioned, but I thought he got into good positions, and even I think it was at 1-0 down. It might even have been at 2-0 down. There was a few passages where he was in good space to really give us an attacking option. But I have a feeling, there was an instance where he was shown inside on his left foot and had to cut it back onto his right foot because he really didn't have any left foot, or the other way around, he was shown his right foot and had to cut back inside. And he was basically put onto his wrong foot. If he was capable on both feet, he was in a really good position to have a shot, but then basically didn't really know what to do and had to cut the ball inside to get himself better situated. So that was a bit of a disappointment. I think he had a free kick that hit the bar as well, but he's definitely emerging as that sort of attacking outlet that if we're wanting something magical to happen, if we're wanting like Philogene was last season, it's basically find Balumi at feet and let him do his thing. So I thought he was reasonably bright in that sense. I gave the one to Mellum as we sort of just struggled with who the one vote should go to. I thought he looked reasonable. I think that midfield mix is going to be really interesting to see what we do this week against Sunderland. We've got quite a few options there in that midfield. There's midfield slots. I think Irma was out injured for this one. So, whether by design or by accident, like, how we come to this midfield trio is going to be an interesting one. But yeah, look, you could have thrown a hat over a couple of players for that one vote in that one. But I'm trying to think. There was not really anything else to call out for the game. I thought Zambrano was okay. I mean, I'm sort of mindful of the fact that he gave the ball away a few times, leading to those one-on-ones early in the game.
Yeah,
he's still young. He probably needs support there in that midfield role. Maybe it's an Alzate or a Puerta or someone coming in to help him. But yeah, nothing else really to call out from the game, I didn't think.
No, it's sort of trying to think who was sort of under the radar, but
Coyle was sort of middle of the road. Jones was middle of the road.
Yeah.
Bedia didn't do a whole lot to impress up top. Actually, it's an interesting one as well, whether Pedro, gets given a start. I mean, he looked quite dangerous when he came on, or if his legs are only up to really coming off the bench at this stage would be an interesting one to see this weekend as well.
Yep.
So we shall see. I guess we're coming out the other side of the international break, so we can touch on that. Obviously, we had a Turkish training camp for the majority of the squad over the break. Did play a Turkish. I didn't actually realize that they were in the top division in Turkey. I just sort of assumed they were, a little bit of a smaller club than that, just because of the fact that it was looks like a reasonably comfortable 2-0 win with what was largely our second string side. But Burstow getting his first goal for the club. I think I saw that this was only the third time or fourth time that they've conceded multiple goals this season. So
11th in Super League. It's a funny league, the Super League. They sort of really stretched, and I guess it's quite dynamic in terms of you got like those top 4 or 5 teams, and then
I was going to say, it feels like it must be a little bit like Scotland, where you'd have you'd have some really good Champions League quality teams, and then the bottom, I don't know, 6 teams could be quite, almost League One Championship standard. Yeah. We had the forgotten man, Dogan Cynic, come back off the bench in that one as well, I saw, which was interesting to see what sort of role he'll play in the squad this season, because if we get anything from him, I think it's just, a bonus. Like, it's not really anything expected. But good to see. Look, Puerta got minutes, so we're just talking about him. Seemed like he had quite a good game. Burstow getting the goal can't do his confidence any harm. And Hughes, I think, also started the game and got some minutes under the belt. So, and Rushworth in goal, I think I heard had a really good game. So all in all, pretty decent run out of minutes, I guess. Yeah.
Matty
Jacob on the score sheet as well, who seemingly is now sort of our third choice left back, which, it'll be interesting to see actually with Drame's form, if Giles doesn't pick up as well, what sort of role Jacob might end up playing. But
he looks good though. Like, I thought he looked, I think it was last season or towards the end, he could hold his own. So I think he probably deserves a spot soon if Giles isn't sort of living up to the standard that he usually does.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting with some of those young players, because I remember Fleming a few years ago, in the same way was, I feel like maybe it's the adrenaline of bursting onto the scene and the excitement of youth, and they just sort of hit the ground running, and that the grind of the season sort of takes it out of them, because I feel like a lot of those younger guys really struggle to back it up that next season. So whether Jacob, sorry,
I was just going to say, and Fleming, I think, sort of following him at Oxford a little bit, and it seemed like he stopped getting game time there for a little bit there, and but yeah, it's weird to think, because I think a lot of people would have put them in their top 3 players for some games back, not last season before.
No, absolutely. So no, it'll be interesting to see how he gets back in. I feel like left back's always a spot where we just seem really, talking about Fleming, I mean, another left back. We seem to have a lot of, it feels like ever since Elder left the club that we've had, a lot of options, but no real standout option at left back, which is it's funny that that's sort of become our problem spot in the team, so to speak.
It's a curse. We've got the left back curse.
That's it. I mean, Vinagre last year as well wasn't much better. So
no.
Anyway, Nothing else really out of the international break I can think of. Zambrano I saw was on the bench for Ecuador in both of their games. Didn't get on the pitch this morning. Would have been cool to see him get some minutes for Ecuador, but it wasn't to be.
Yep.
I assume Miller's played for Canada in their games, but I haven't really seen how he's done. But seems like everyone's still in, good health, so should be almost a fully fit squad to pick from against Sunderland, which we'll talk about now with that great segue. So the table topping Sunderland. So they've really kind of hit the ground running. I mean, they started the season in sort of stellar form. I mean, I think they won sort of 4 or 5 of their games in a row, and have sort of come back to earth a little bit with only the 2 wins in the last 5 games, but still enough to be topping the table. And it's really off the back of quite a strong young group of players. And it's funny actually seeing how many sides in the championship are trying this approach now. I mean, I would say us included, where you almost see these sides have an age restriction on their signings. So they basically only sign players under the age of, 24 or something, where they've got, Rigg, who I think came through into the first team as a 16-year-old. You've got Mundell, who I think they signed last year, is basically a replacement for Jack Clark before he left for Ipswich. And then Joe Bellingham as well, who I think they must have signed him from Birmingham as well, because I think he came through there as well. And it's all starting to click for them this season. So they're looking really exciting. New manager in Regis Labrise as well. So it's a funny one in that sense. You sort of look at us with Volta, and granted, look, it's a very new squad for us. But you look at a Sunderland with a new manager, and the way they've been able to hit the ground running quite effectively is an interesting contrast. So look, it's an interesting challenge actually, where I would almost say that the Sunderland fixture on paper is potentially an easier game than Norwich, in the sense that whilst they're top of the table, it doesn't feel as if they have as much, I guess, pound for pound quality as a Norwich. Like Norwich having the Josh Sargent and Borja Signs and the other player whose name has now gone out of my head. But, like all of their quality players at Norwich. Sunderland have reasonably good quality players, but they're all quite young as well. So it feels more like a game that is potentially a more of a 50-50.
And I sort of see it as like the perfect fixture at the moment for us, coming off the international break. Not so much for us to look at winning, but sort of to see, okay, well, we're almost 9 games. This will be our 9th game in. Where are we at with the squad? Where are we at with, as in a short term, I guess. Especially that. I mean, there's a lot of talk around how everyone wanted Walter out. Admittedly, I did get there in the end, and then we started winning, and then it's like he's being touched by God. But I think this would be a really, really good fixture for us to sort of see where we're at and what's working, what isn't going to be working, and maybe we can spend half of that sort of working with the players that have always started in their positions, and then mix some things up. Because Sunderland, they came back to the championship the 2022-23 season, did relatively good from memory. Like I think they were smashing.
They made the playoffs, I think, that first season, and then dropped off last year when they sacked Mowbray and got Mick Beale, and then basically gave up halfway through last season and didn't make the playoffs, and now they're back on track for it. It's funny actually. You brought up the perceptions around Volta, and we didn't really talk about it much with that Norwich game. I mean, we sort of alluded to it with the shots that we've given up in the last few games. It's interesting that a lot of the criticism leveled at him, I wouldn't say it went away, but it definitely diminished with those 3 wins in a row, even though a lot of those warning signs and red flags were still there. And we've really seen them come home in a big way against Norwich with that result.
Yep.
I do find it interesting, I suppose, that we've had those 3 favourable fixtures, followed by now Norwich, Sunderland, and then we've got Burnley to come next week as well, as 3 very difficult fixtures in terms of, I guess, form and on the table, before we then have the 3 promoted clubs in Oxford, Portsmouth and Derby. So it could end up being quite a bipolar sort of, I guess, emotional ride where you go from 3 wins in a row to 3 losses in a row to 3 wins in a row. I wonder at what point, as you and the club, the supporters, everyone else can say, okay, we've now got a clearer objective picture of how we're looking for this season, where it's not just, heavily influenced by the fixtures that we've just come through.
Yeah.
What for you is, I guess, is it 15 games? Is it 20 games? Is it the full season? Like, what's for you the point where you go, okay, I've now got a good sense of, how, I guess, supportive I am of Volta's style and managerial prowess?
Man, it's so hard because, it changes every week, unfortunately. But yeah, I want to say maybe, like, so we've got, the next 3 fixtures are going to be, 2 fixtures are going to be a bit of a grind, like I guess Norwich was, but I don't know. I think I said it initially at the start of the season, it would be January, but it's kind of hard because then a lifeline might get thrown with signings, and then it's like, okay, well, let's see how it gels with the new signings. But I'm not fully Walter out yet. If we lose the next 2 4-0, then I'll probably hold up the sign. But
Fair enough.
yeah, I don't know. I think 15 games, 20 games, it's hard because you don't want to go through so much just to start again. And I don't know, I thought there was an ample opportunity to start fresh, quite a few fixtures ago, but obviously we're in a good place with it now.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting game in that sense because I'd like to think it's a good opportunity, as I sort of started by saying with this fixture versus the Norwich fixture, to say this feels more to me like a I don't know, I'm trying to think of the bracket of team I'd put Sunderland in, but it's more of that sort of Stoke / QPR, not in terms of how they're performing this season, but in terms of, I guess, stature of the squad, where you go, QPR and Stoke are definitely underperforming at the moment, although Stoke have just had a great 6-1 win over Portsmouth, I think it was. They've got a good squad, but it's not an amazing squad, where I think Sunderland have had a great set of results to start the season. But in terms of the actual squad quality, I think it's more in that sort of bracket of teams. So I'd like to think out the other side of an international break with a bit more time to gel the squad, time to get on the training pitch, getting players up to speed, that maybe we can go toe to toe with them. And if we did see a similar performance to the Norwich, like if it's another 4-0 defeat, that for me is when you start to go, we're not learning our lessons. We're not, like last season, I think was a good example, was when we lost to Ipswich 3-0 and we came out the back of that and went, okay, there's our reality check, and we started to make some tweaks. It's whether we do the same thing after that Norwich game, but look, we'll see how that goes. Because on that topic, I guess, what sort of changes would you like to see to the 11 for this game?
Oh, man, it's hard to tell.
It's always an interesting one when you think about it, because it's like, is it, you almost have to think, is it like, are you building the 11 from scratch, or are you saying, here's the 11 from the last game and who do we change? Because you'd probably get 2 different answers.
Exactly, yeah. And I don't know, just like sort of how you've described their squad, they almost seem like the perfect championship team to sort of go up against and test our squad in a way. Not test it because they're a hard team, but sort of, if we're playing well, we can play really well. If we're not playing well, then it seems like they're pretty switched on and they're in form. Then, hopefully we're not playing badly, but if we can at least grind through it, it'll be all right. But I don't know. It's I don't know what, like, I'd like to see Hughes from the start. I think I was going to say before, you got like 50%, you can experiment with this for some of the positions. And then the other side, like if our midfield's working the way that it's working, and if it's working well, then you don't really want to change it. But we've also got so many new signings that not new anymore, but yeah, it's hard to see like who might be flying under the radar, and who doesn't get a mention.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for me, Yeah, definitely Hughes in. I'd probably keep Panda in goal, even though I thought Rushworth.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, from the sounds of things, I haven't actually seen him play, but from the sounds of things, was very good in that friendly. And this is the sort of game where if you were looking for an excuse to make a change, you go, well, we've just lost 4-0, even though like we've both just given Panda man of the match essentially. Whether Volta wants to get Rushworth into the side that way. But then I think outside of that, maybe an Alzate into midfield for a Slater, maybe Irma back in for Mellum would be the only other changes. And, look, if Zambrano's sort of leggy on his way back from international duty and same for Miller, whether we see, Kamara potentially starting for Miller and I guess, maybe a Puerta, maybe a Slater or a Palmer potentially. But then you're almost you're changing the whole three in midfield. It feels like quite a lot, but look, I think it'll certainly be an interesting 11, I think, for this one. And then a score prediction.
Let's go 1-1 because it's pretty matched up, and I think again this is going to be a good one for sort of us to sort of see where Volta's at with. Is hopefully we'll be able to tell on the field if there's progress being made and whether or not Volta can sort of read what's going on in the championship as well.
I'm
going to go 1-1, but yeah.
No, definitely. And you know what? I didn't actually check. Is it a home game or is it an away game? It is 1 a.m. for us, 12 midnight for you. 1 a.m. Monday morning. Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting one. I'm hoping it's on BN. I actually haven't checked if it's on BN Sports, because that would mean we can watch it in the morning and not sacrifice a work day with a lack of sleep.
I do it anyways.
Yeah. So it is a home game. So I think we lost to them 1-0 at home last season, didn't we? So look, if we can, I'm feeling maybe like a 2-1 loss. But if we can get on the score sheet, if we can make it competitive, if we can, I guess, limit their chances, it's probably, like you said, it's sort of seen that progress under Volta is the main thing for me. As long as it's not another 4-0, I think I'll be reasonably happier with it. But we shall see. Well, look, thank you for joining me for this one, Dill.
Cheers. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening in. We'll be back this time next week. We'll have 2 games next week because we've got the Burnley and also I think it's Oxford game to look ahead to. And we'll reflect on the performance against Sunderland. But until then, come on, City.